by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
When they attack.
I have a dream.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
You have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And I'm back. I've got to fix my picture here. Welcome everybody. Checking my audio. I think I actually have my audio set correctly today, which means that I don't have to actually speak really loud. But I do need to not pound my desk like Jay Dyer does and shake the camera. I think that James Corbett does that too, although it doesn't seem to affect James Corbett's audience. Anyway. Welcome everybody. It's Tuesday, it's September 2nd, and today I was going to talk about something that I've been working on. I posted last week, I posted my 4 leading indicators on epistemological warfare. These are basically ways that you can figure out, you can see the matrix, that you can figure out, how you're being lied to and how these stories influence you and impact you. And I talked a little bit about in that article about a show that my wife and I finished binge watching the first 2 seasons of last night, which is called Severance. And one of the meta themes in Severance that carries over from the Apple Plus Foundation series is this idea of memory and managing people's memories and managing what they know and what they remember. And it's kind of a lead-in for what I wanted to talk about today, because it turns out that our memory and the truth about things that happen in the past wind up becoming the predominant way that people in power control us. And so by controlling narratives, then you can control the way that people perceive themselves and their place in the world and how they fit into the world, and thereby you can control them. And one of the things that's kind of insidious about this show, Severance, is the idea that these people have a chip put into their head, and then they go to work 8 hours a day and they don't remember anything about what they do at work when they get home. So their work life and their home life are completely segmented. They're separate, and they have no knowledge of one another. So they call themselves innies and outies. And what's curious to me about the whole thing is that it really seems to be a wink in the way that Michael Hoffman would refer to a truth or consequences kind of staging of something, where this is something that's actually really happening today. I mean, one of the major plot, if you're worried about spoilers, you can turn the volume down now, or you can turn the show off and then go watch the show and come back and listen to this. But one of the big kind of conflicts that goes on in the lead character's existence is that he's got an ongoing relationship with his wife, who he can't find, or he doesn't know if she's actually, he thinks she's dead. And then you've got a love interest that goes on at work. And again, the work person and they call them the innies and the outies. The innie doesn't know what the outie is doing, and the outie doesn't know what the innie is doing. And so it brings into play a lot of ideas where they're playing with the very fabric of what is morality and what is ethics. What is it that you should do? What is it that would be the proper thing to do under the circumstances? And at the end of the day, there's a complete lack of morals. It's really about ethics, and the conversations that people have are morals are kind of tangential to ethics, and so that's kind of a background to the way that I've been consuming media. Right when when the sun goes down, I only have about 7 or 8 hours that I can look at a screen on a computer a day, and then I have to go do something else. I can look at a screen sitting on the sofa, but I can't, concentrate and write and do those types of things. So I started thinking, I kind of have a punch list of things that I wanted to get done this week, and one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to get back to the organizing committee for the Pacific Palisades, because I was involved in the first meeting of this group of people who are talking about wanting to secede from the Pacific Palisades. And in that meeting, I mentioned that I thought that was the kind of thing that the Berggruen Institute would be very supportive of, because I thought that the wildfires that they wrote about and their plan to their blueprint to renew California that they published in 2011, that in the Hegelian dialectic that it is, that they'd be very interested in helping the Pacific Palisades spin off from the city of Los Angeles, because in the divide and conquer world, in the divide and conquer strategy that the oligarchs use in order to control the planet, they want to break people up into as many constituent pieces as possible. And so I was a little kind of distressed when a couple of the people on the committee jumped up and raised their hand and immediately wanted to reach out and see if Nicholas Berggruen could be of any help to the group, which I thought was, I thought it was, and one of the guys said to me, he goes, well, if I think that there's somebody who's in power, I'm going to go, kind of kiss their ring and go see what's up with that. So that's not my way of doing things. But in any case, and maybe that's why I live in a little apartment in Oxnard, California, and he's a big real estate developer. But in any case, I'm going to start off kind of with this video from Nicholas Berggruen that got posted 11 days ago and had 73 views before I played it. So we got 47 people watching this live right now, and I usually get, I don't know, a couple thousand views. So I'm assuming that I'm beating Nikki here by a magnitude or two on viewers. But let's hear what he has to say about America. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up, and I believe this tab will work. And I'm going to start it over. Let's just listen to what Nikki has to say about America.
The American dream is the one of being able to do something for oneself. It's really the celebration of individual challenges and success. That balance with the idea of building a society that functions with everyone. Those two quite different goals.
Okay, I'm in 100% agreement here. I think that he's definitely he's not wrong.
Have always been at odds. Do you serve the community or do you serve the individual?
Okay, I think that's a false dichotomy. Okay, it isn't just about the community or the individual. It's very clear in the Constitution that there's something called that the Constitution of the United States of America, for example, is to provide for the common defense and to promote the general welfare. Those are the two things that the government is supposed to do. People are supposed to take care of everything else. So I will continue.
And America is trying to serve both.
America again, this is I'm trying to remember what the word was that Hayden White in this book Meta History used, but America doesn't make decisions about things. He's talking about America like it's a noun, like it's a person. America is a country, and it has governments, and it has populations, and it's got lots of people, but America isn't trying to serve both. Okay, there is no this America that he's talking about is a chimera. Okay, it is it's a fantasy. So which is great because he's got like this like weird thing behind him and all these empty bookshelves. Let's continue to listen.
But it's at times been serving the ideas of the community and at times the ideas of individual success.
Okay, so let me just jump back. I wasn't paying that much attention because I looked at a comment. So let me hear this again. I'm gonna roll it back.
Of the community and at times the ideas of individual success.
I gotta roll this back one more time. And I don't know if you guys can hear the dogs that are going crazy across the
It's
street.
trying to serve both, but it's at times been serving the ideas of the
Okay, so it's talking about America is serving the ideas. Like America is like, is this the philosopher king of America? Is this the king of America? Is this the emperor of America? I'm not sure. We'll get Quigley after I finish. Listen to Nikki. We'll bring Quigley in. Here we go.
the community and at times the ideas of individual success.
Okay, so this is completely a false scenario. Like America doesn't serve all of these different things. America is a country, and there's a constitution, and there's a government that's trying to do things, and there's a popular culture, which I argue that popular culture is just another word for oligarch mind control. But this is all a chimera. So continue.
Clearly, in this last election,
Clearly, in this last election,
America has made a choice, and the choice is towards the risk-taking individual celebration.
okay, so I want to point out that he's reading here, I think, at this point. And I don't think he wrote this. I think that Nathan Gardells wrote this.
More than serving the community as a whole.
Okay, let's just go back to, okay, so this is clearly in the last
Last
election.
election, America has made a choice.
America made a
and the choice is towards the risk-taking individual celebration.
Okay, so life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, those are the founding principles of America. Okay, you may not like it, but that's and to promote the general, to provide for the promote the general welfare. No, provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. Those are the 5 things, right? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness for the individual. That's in the Declaration of Independence. And then the government is supposed to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. Those are the 2 things that the government is supposed to do. Okay. So again, this is a canard.
More than serving the community as a whole.
Okay, so this is communism or socialism, right? And this guy is a billionaire, right? He lives in the William Randolph, when he claims to be homeless, but he owns William Randolph Hearst's mansion in Beverly Hills, and he likes what happened to my camera? Why did my camera do that? He likes, I'm waving my hand around. It's changing the angle on my camera. So he lives in the Sierra Tower. He's got a condo in the Sierra Tower on Sunset Boulevard and then Sunset Strip. He's got a G6. He flies around the world. He's got multiple palaces in Venice. And he's talking about the community as a whole. Like, when's the last time that he threw a block party and invited everybody over to the Rockefeller Mansion? The William Randolph Hearst Mansion. So, he talks out of both sides of his mouth quite a bit.
But for America to be healthy long term.
But for America to be healthy long term, this means that he in his position as the philosopher king is making the prescriptive declaration that let's see what his prescriptive declaration is.
It needs to serve the majority.
Oh, it needs to serve the majority. Well, I think that flies in direct conflict with what the founding founding fathers of the United States of America, it's what they believed. They believed in individual rights.
The vast majority of its citizens.
By its citizens and its constituents, as determined by who? Who gets to determine those things? This imaginary America? This imaginary America that needs to have its mind changed?
Its constituents. That will have to be by sharing the opportunity.
It will have to be by sharing the opportunities. There's no choices here. It will have to be by sharing the opportunities.
Is to some extent sharing the wealth.
Sharing the wealth, like Nick. Nick, are you sharing your wealth? I don't see you sharing your wealth. Like,
that America generates.
That America generates. So he's not talking about sharing his wealth. He's talking about sharing your wealth. All right, Nicholas Bergruen thoughts. It's like Stuart Smalley. All right, so why am I playing this? I'm playing this because I thought that I was going to go back to the group, the Pacific Palisades Independence Group, the Independent Pacific Palisades Group, and present to them something like the Declaration of Independence. And I started thinking about the last couple of articles that I've written about epistemological warfare and about what the big problem is. Because like I said, I had a conversation with 4 people in the first meeting about what I thought the causes of the Pacific Palisades fire were. And the people that I spoke to immediately wanted to go kowtow to the person that I thought had the best chance of being in that decision tree about how all of those things happen. That is, the fire department standing down and the politicians doing what they did. So, and I started thinking to myself, well, how does that happen? And again, how does that happen has to do with how people come to know or understand what they know or understand. And that's the essence of epi-war. That's the essence of epistemological warfare. And I started to work on a Declaration of Independence for the Pacific Palisades, right? But then I realized that, the Pacific, I was talking to Jessica about it, and Jessica said, well, the Pacific Palisades they don't have their own water. I mean, if I was the philosopher king of Pacific Palisades, I would drill for oil. I would put in GE 2-stage electric turbines. I would generate unlimited amounts of energy that would allow me to desalinate water coming out of the Pacific Ocean. And then I could have my own little fiefdom there in the Pacific Palisades if I were the philosopher king of the Pacific Palisades. But that's not going to happen, right? And so I started to think more about what she said. And the idea is that we need an epistemological Bill of Rights for everyone. So when the United States of America started, we started off as this kind of like little experiment. Like, what if you had a country where people had these kinds of rights and stuff? And it's arguable whether or not the intent of the United States ever was noble, whether or not the fairy tales that we get told about Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine, whether or not any of that stuff's actually the way that things went down, because we weren't there, right? And so we're dependent upon words, and we're dependent upon words that were written down by people and words that can be falsified and realities that can be changed. And so we need to kind of stick with Parmenides' idea of what is, and we can look at those words. But at the end of the day, the idea that I came up with was that if we don't have access to truth, and I'm going to bring up this document that I've been working on. There we go. I'll just share it. And this is a work in progress. I have not published this yet. I haven't finished it, and I did this a couple of weeks ago, and I think that maybe this is a good idea, because I like getting feedback from people. And okay, window. Trying to find my thing. Calibre. Yeah, here it is. And again, this is this program that I used. It's called Obsidian. And so this is my rough draft for something that I'm calling the People's Declaration of Independence for any free people. And when I mean any free people, I mean everybody. I listen to the people who claim to be America Firsters, who want to throw illegal aliens out of the country, or think that because of that America is a Christian country, and so that means that we need to get rid of Muslims, or all of this kind of nonsense that's going on. And the reason that I think that it's nonsense is because I think all divide and conquer strategies are nonsense. They are put together in order to control us. And that's why Jesus said, love your neighbor and love your enemies. So with that as a preamble, I'm going to say that when truth is attacked, and when organizations built to serve people, instead betray them, those people must act. And that's us. That's everybody that I'm talking to. That's not somebody that we choose. That's not somebody who's a leader, who's a proxy or surrogate for us. That's us. Okay? When somebody fucks with us, it's up to us to do something about it. When citizens are left without property, as we were in the Pacific Palisades on January 8th, without justice, as we are right now, and without recourse, and when the guilty stand ready to profit from destruction, it becomes necessary for the people to declare their independence of any power that has abandoned or enslaved them. It's not up to some elected official, okay, to be held accountable. That's what the oligarchs are counting on. They want us to blame Karen Bass. They want us to blame Gavin Newsom. They want us to blame Rick Caruso. And I'm not saying they're innocent, and I'm not saying that they all don't deserve to be thrown in a volcano, because I think they do. Okay, but we can't go around blaming a scapegoat and then turning it over to somebody else who's also in the power structure and expect that they're going to fix it, because they're not. Okay, they're going to look out for their own self-interest, and they're going to take care of it. So we have to do something about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that truth is the lifeblood of freedom. I'm not using the word liberty in this document. Freedom is something that you are given by God, and it's something that is up to you to claim. It's up to you to claim your freedom. Liberty is something that is doled out to you, like porridge to Oliver Swift, and it can be taken away from you. Liberty can be taken away from you. So truth is the lifeblood of freedom. And that justice is born from, and justice is born from truth. You can't have justice if you're telling everybody that World War I was started because somebody shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You can't have justice if you tell everybody that the United States entered World War II because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. If you don't know the truth that there were financial interests in creating both world wars, and that the people who are in control of the world to this day were the beneficiaries of those lies that we were all told, okay? There should be no JP Morgan Bank. There should be no JP Morgan Chase. All of the money that's been made by JP Morgan is off of the blood and treasure of the United States and all of the allied countries who sacrificed their sons and fathers, okay, for those bankers. Okay, so those banks should be seized. So, and those banks are the stockholders of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve holds all of the debt for the United States of America, as do all of the central banks of all of these countries. And these people are all these institutions are all culpable. They're all culpable for these wars, for these hundreds of millions of people who have died by epistemicide. So justice is born from truth. And when truth is obstructed, justice collapses. And that's where we are. And by the way, that's where we've been since at least December 23rd, 1913. And I'm sure there's people that can argue that it's older than that. When truth is stolen, understanding falls, and people so deprived become enslaved. We are slaves. We are slaves to a magic money system where we believe that when the government sends us a bill, that we need to pay it, and that if we don't, bad things will happen to us, and that's just the way that things are. That's not that's a magical spell that we're all under, and it's a slavery spell. So we are under the spell of slavery. That concealing crimes through false stories is the supreme theft of truth and the highest crime against people. So I don't believe in classified documents. I don't believe that the CIA or MI6 or Five Eyes or Mossad or the KGB or anyone in any quote unquote intelligence operation is doing anything except blackmailing people. And to that end, I think that all classified documents should be declassified. Okay, let the chips fall. Okay, let's find out what's going on. But truth, the concealing crimes through false stories is the supreme theft of truth and the highest crime against people. So I want to know who shot John F. Kennedy. You know, I want to know whether or not the Butler, Pennsylvania thing was real or not. You know, I want to know the truth on those things. And any intelligence agency that's holding information back, okay, that those people are culpable, and they should also be thrown into a volcano. You know, that laws, policies, contracts, or ethical claims that twist or deny truth have no validity and carry no authority over free people. So if they're going to classify documents, then they have no right to rule us. If they're holding information back to quote unquote protect us, they cede their right to rule us. Okay, it's just they don't get that. They don't get to do that. They don't get to use that excuse. They don't get to use those ideas. It's morally wrong. To secure freedom, the citizens must take back truth, defend it with their lives, and hold to account any who would steal it. We're talking about stealing truth. This is the highest crime in Peter Duke's ontology of the world. Okay, if you're stealing truth, if you're a liar, if you're misrepresenting, if you're using false premises in order to kill people in Gaza or kill people in South Central Los Angeles, I don't care where you're killing people, or burn down entire communities, okay, you are committing the highest form of crime. That's it. Short of murder, because ultimately these lies always turn into death of innocence. Innocent people get killed because people lie. So what are the grievances against power? Governments, corporations, and every form of organizing group have failed when they betray the standards of truth and justice. To prove this, let the facts be submitted to a candid world. They abandon the people to ruin through sworn and entrusted to protect life, property, and trust. People get sworn to this, and then they laugh it off. You know, Gavin Newsom was laughing and dancing in the Pacific Palisades. Karen Bass, you know, but you know, I don't think that Donald Trump is less guilty. He's less guilty of he did different things, but I don't think that he's less guilty. And for people, and I want to be proven wrong on this. There's people go, oh, yeah, every day I see, and I'm looking for Cindy in the comments. Like every day I see people, oh, Donald Trump is about to do this, and Donald Trump is about to do that. We did from 2017 to 2021. We had 4 years of Donald Trump is about to do something. Okay, I haven't seen him do it yet. Again, when he declares Chase Manhattan Bank and Citibank and JP Morgan and Brown Brothers Harriman enemy combatants, then I will believe that Donald Trump is going to do something. But I don't believe he's going to do that. They permitted corruption and delay in place of action while harm spread unchecked. This is a 200-year-old problem. This isn't new. Okay. Freemasons, you know, winking, Freemasonic attorneys arguing cases in front of Freemasonic judges, Mormon attorneys arguing in front of Mormon judges. It doesn't matter what secret society you're talking about. They all have winks and nods, right? And justice doesn't get served because truth is not the highest priority. Okay, expedience is the highest priority. And again, that's a crime. I think expedience is a crime. They spread false accounts to protect the guilty. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald was lone gunman. Okay, Jimmy Wales, you're culpable because that's what it says on the Wikipedia page. Okay, don't let lies live, and don't hide behind crowdsourcing. A crowdsourced lie is still a lie, right? Let's see. They tolerate censorship, ridicule, and propaganda, strangling the people's right to speak and know. That's right. I don't, you know, if somebody says something and it sounds anti-Semitic, too bad. Okay. If somebody claims to be a Nazi and a white supremacist, too bad. Okay. That's the world that we live in. Okay. And to claim that those words have the ability to influence people's behavior when your lies are covered up and cause hundreds of millions of people to die in wars, that's just hypocrisy. So, you know, we need to take control of this. Let's see. They failed to provide security, leaving organized crime, syndicates, and monopolies to thrive. This is absolutely true. You know, we made alcohol we created prohibition and turned half of the people in the United States into criminals, and then created the FBI in order to control that. And the FBI just turned into just the government's blackmail arm. You know, the reason that the FBI doesn't ever get better is because they're in the blackmail business, and that's what they do. They build dossiers on people, and if they build up enough dirt on you, then they'll either throw you in jail or they'll get you to go to work for them under threat of going to jail. I mean, that's not freedom. That's organized capos. That's like the concentration camp with ties, you know? Anyway, they deny due process by obstructing honest inquiry while shielding those in power. They enforce laws or invoke ethics that twisted truth, using the appearance of legality to cloak crimes and silence the people. Okay, the slap and seals, George Webb calls them, you know, where in order to make a case go away, you have to seal all the evidence so that it doesn't go into the public record. You know, that shouldn't be legal. Not in an honest society, right? They broke their oaths, charters, or public trust, betraying the people who placed faith in them. So these people, they get into power, and I don't care who they are, Paul Ryan or Adam Schiff, it doesn't matter what party they're in. They're all liars. right? They're all withholding information, and they're using it in order to be able to manipulate the circumstances in order to make things better for themselves. So, that's my, again, these are my working notes, but these are the grievances against power. In all these actions, such powers declare themselves unfit to guard the freedom of the people. So I don't care if you're a judge or a senator or a congressman or a city councilman or a policeman or a meter maid, okay? If you're not dealing in truth, you don't deserve your job. You don't deserve to be there, and you don't deserve to tell me what I can and cannot do. The people's claim. We, free citizens everywhere, therefore declare that we are independent of any organization, government, corporation, or institution that betrays truth and freedom. If you own a big food company and you're putting natural flavors on your ingredients instead of telling me what it is, you're guilty. Okay? You're not allowed to do that. You need to label your stuff and tell me what you expect me to put in my body, that you are bonded to make sure doesn't hurt me. Because if you can't make sure that it doesn't hurt me, you shouldn't be allowed to do it. Okay? Or I should be, let me reframe that. I should have enough information that if I want to put your poison in my body, that I'm doing it with the full strength of the truth of what it really is. So don't call it a natural flavor. All right? Don't tell me that it's not a chemical, that it doesn't come from petroleum. Okay? We need to know that. We, the free citizens everywhere, therefore declare that we are independent of any organization, government, corporation, or institution that betrays truth and freedom, that we claim the inherent right to truth and we will defend it. Okay? This is the covenant that we need to have. We need to defend the truth. Okay? Because by the reason that we're in this mess is because we're expecting them to defend the truth. No, it's up to us. We have to defend it. That we hold those responsible, whether cartel, oligarch, bureaucrat, or executive, guilty of crimes against the people. If you're lying, you're guilty. Okay? I'm not saying that everybody needs to get thrown in a volcano, but I think a few people thrown in a volcano, or at least put on a TV show, on a game show, a survivor game show, where they have to compete to survive. That would be interesting. We could use their own strategy against them, turn their penance into entertainment profit. I'm kidding. But somebody will do that. That we will not surrender our freedom, that we will fight if required, and we are prepared to pay with our lives rather than submit to lies and enslavement. Now, I don't think most people will do this. I think people are way too comfortable. I think people like their electric sofa and their 65-inch TV set, and they like their, they like being able to drive to the gas station and put gas in their car or plug in their electric car, whatever it is. They like to be able to order dinner with an app on their phone. And so they don't have a problem signing the end user license agreement. But I think end user license agreements, under my framework here that I'm trying to sell you, that it should say, when you click the I accept button on that app, it should say something like, I accept that I'm waiving my Fourth Amendment rights to privacy by using this app that allows me to navigate my car around an area that I haven't been before, to give me directions, that I waive my constitutional rights for that. because that's not what it says. What it gives you is it gives you 500 paragraphs of boilerplate, tiny type that you don't read. And I think that end user license agreements should be written in plain language, and they should tell you what you're giving up when you hit I accept. They love to sell you what you're getting. Instacart, I use Instacart. They bring you your groceries. It's great. If you don't have time to go to halfway across town to get the special, the raw milk that you want, Instacart is great. Okay, but what am I giving up to get Instacart? I'd rather have the federal government not knocking down the doors of stores that sell raw milk so that I could just go to there's a corner store 100 feet from my place. It would be great if I could go to my corner store and just buy raw milk. I wouldn't need Instacart. Okay, but the federal government has made it a crime, basically, to sell raw milk. Even though it's probably the only nutritious kind of milk that anybody can drink. If you're drinking pasteurized milk, you're drinking poison. You're drinking sugar. It's giving you diabetes. In any case, I digress. The resolution: for the defense of truth and freedom, with a firm reliance on divine witness, we mutually pledge, this is us, to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, that we accept in this pledge that we may lose our lives and risk our fortunes and be tested in our sacred honor, yet we will not turn from truth or freedom. Signed by the free citizens in every place, in every time where truth is threatened, which is everybody in the world right now. We don't need a Declaration of Independence for the United States of America. The problem with that is that the Declaration of Independence claimed that our rights come from the laws of nature and nature's God. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. And the Constitution doesn't say anything about the laws of nature and nature's God. The Constitution is a contract, which is again, it makes me wonder how much British imperial influence really happened in the creation of the Constitution of the United States, because in and of itself, Benjamin Franklin famously said, "You've got a republic if you can keep it." And I think that and John Adams said that the Constitution will only work for a moral and religious people. And what I think that what both of them understood about it is that if we, the people, meaning the individuals out there in the world, are not taking personal responsibility for our own freedom, that it will be taken from us. And that it is up to us. And, in that way, our government being allowed to educate us winds up becoming a self-defeating principle, because government is interested in maintaining government. And if it has a way to change what we believe in order to make its functioning of itself more efficient, it will. And so we have to, as individuals, as individual citizens who have free will, okay, we have to exercise our free will. And if we don't, it will be taken from us. And we're in the 11th hour now. Like if we don't figure this out right now, okay, then if somebody tells me that if I don't get a vaccination, that they're going to do the bad things are going to happen to me, that's going to be it. That's the red line. Like, it's all red lines for me now. It's red lines all around. And so to that end, I'm just looking at the chat to see, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to have any questions about this People's Declaration of Independence, or any questions about epistemology, or this book, Metahistory, and how words are used as weapons? Let's see. Yeah, I have nights. Lots of people are making comments. Do you have any questions? Does anybody have a question? I want to make this interactive. I like dialogue so much better than lectures. Again, I see lots of, and this is something that I notice about chats on these live streams too, is that, here we go, Debbie, thank you, Debbie. Debbie says, love and agree with you, but how do we change it? Well, good question. We change it. Somebody asked me this question today. We change it by asking the right questions. We have to learn, how do you challenge freedom without being violent and without, throwing an insurrection or getting compromised, right? The way that you do it is by asking questions. And again, this is why I think that a linguistic interpretation of the Gospels and the red letter conversations that Jesus had with people, and looking at how he did things, right? So epistemology is how we do things, right? If you look at most of the conversations that Jesus had with people, he was asking them questions. And that's when I started to notice that Jesus and Tony Robbins are doing the same thing, right? They're asking questions. And so I think that it starts, Debbie, so what's the easiest question to ask anyone? If somebody is telling you something that's outrageous, somebody sends you a meme, right? That's outrageous. You can ask them the question, how do you know that's true? This is what Mike Cernovich did to Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley said, you said that Hillary Clinton was sick. And Mike said she was sick. And he goes, well, how do you know that? And he goes, well, I saw the video of her. And he goes, and Scott Pelley said, well, experts say that she wasn't sick. And Mike said, again, I'm paraphrasing. Mike said something like, well, who said that? And he said, Scott Pelley said the campaign. And Mike said, well, why did you believe them? Why do you believe that's true? Right. And I'm not telling you to go pick a fight with everybody. I think that one of the things that I've been very kind of forthright about is that none of this stuff works if you don't have rapport. Right. So if you're just somebody who's going around asking questions all the time, how do you know that's true? How do you know that's true? You just come off like an asshole, right? But if you get to a point where you've established rapport with people, and rapport is pretty easy to do. You can do it with a yes ladder. You could do it by mirroring people. There's all kinds of different articles that I've written about how you do that, right? But if you have rapport with people, you can ask them questions that will cause them to go into cognitive dissonance. Okay. And that cognitive dissonance is the tell, okay, that whatever the question is that you're asking them, it's hitting someplace. Now, they may come back with some kind of made up answer for why they believe whatever it is that they believe. But it's the challenging. If you're constantly challenging people on why they believe whatever it is that they believe, you may get them to a point when you're not there where they're challenging themselves. And that's the key. I think that's the key to the whole thing. And because we are all born with this ability to ask questions, to think, right? To use our logos. Logos is what I'm using right now. I'm taking ideas, I'm turning it into words. It's going into this microphone. It's coming out of your speaker. And that's logos. Okay. And if you're using, we're all born with logos. We all have logos. Okay. And it's what separates us from dogs and dolphins and chimpanzees and birds. Right. So if we can exercise that God-given gift by using it in order to ask people the right questions, then we can trigger thinking in other people. And the key isn't trying to be right. The key is to try to get people to think. Because if people are thinking, they'll figure out the right answer. Okay. Most of the people who are coming up with the wrong answer know the wrong answer. It isn't that they've thought about the wrong answer. It's that somebody has told them, or they read a book, and they came to that conclusion because words, right? because of logos that's not being applied in the direction of truth or love. So let me see. Arthur says, is the true believer's mindset a major vector for epi-war memes? Yes. And true believers, for people who don't know what Arthur is asking about, it's the term comes from a book called The True Believer, written by Eric Hoffer, I think in 1950, I want to say 51, or and the vector for controlling people is frustration, right? So when I see my friend Fleckus and Richard Rapboy, and they're super frustrated about the illegal aliens, and they're super frustrated about the Muslims, and they're super frustrated about blah, 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 blah. Okay. Their reactions are true believer reactions, right? And the problem with true believers is that they're suckers for flags and slogans like "Make America Great Again." Okay. And "Make America Great Again" is a meaningless statement because it doesn't specify what great is. Okay. And if great is the Star Spangled Banner or some imaginary, I mean, you got to look at like what is the United States of America? We have a Declaration of Independence, we have a Constitution, right? And since 1913, since the Federal Reserve got created, we've been putting a boot, to quote Toby Keith, we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. So since November 1913, we've been putting our boot in people's asses around the world. Is that the great America that you're talking about? Is it the arsenal of democracy that killed, I don't know, 400,000 people in Dresden? Civilians? If nuclear bombs are real, it's the country that dropped nuclear bombs on civilian targets in Japan. Okay, that's what happens when you have a true believer mindset. Okay, so we need to talk about what America. To me, if you're talking about promoting providing for the general defense, I mean, Edward Bernays suggested that we change the name of the Department of War to the Defense Department. Well, we've killed more. The Defense Department has killed way more people than the Department of War ever killed. It's kind of crazy. So, in any case, the true believer mindset persuades people to, again, because they're not thinking. Frustration is a manifestation of cognitive dissonance. What you want and what you see don't line up, and so you get frustrated. And by taking advantage of that frustration, then people, can be manipulated. All right, let me see. I got that one. Let's see. How do we disrupt narratives at work when they were DEI and now they're hiding under compliance with new administration? How do you navigate this at work? Again, you need to do it. You need to do it honestly, okay, and with what's the right word? You need to be honest, and you need to ask challenging questions, but don't make accusations. Okay, when people say, "Oh, you have white privilege," you can ask the question, "Well, how do you know that's true?" And they'll give you a bunch of reasons, and then you can say, "And well, why do you believe that?" Okay, there's ways that you can ask those questions, and you don't have to tell the person that they're wrong. By telling somebody that they're wrong, they'll invariably come back with a question, which is, "Well, do you think that this is? Don't you think that because my family came over here?" I mean, I think I tweeted about this a couple of days ago. I think that the the biggest crime against black people who were enslaved. And by the way, Michael Hoffman does in his book, They Were White and They Were Slaves, makes a very great point that most of the American settlers, early American settlers, especially in the early colonies, were slaves and they were white. Okay. If you haven't read that book or listened to the podcast that I made using Notebook LM, I highly suggest it. But if people are claiming that, their black slave ancestors were brought over here and they weren't afforded the same opportunities that white people were, you know, you can ask the question, well, when do you think that changed? And they'll go, well, they'll quote the New York Times. But if you do enough research, you'll find that Jim Crow was, again, and you can find stories about this on the Duke Report. I think that Palmerston Zoo does a very good job of explaining this, that Jim Crow was a direct result of emancipation, right? That it was long after slaves were brought over here. The slaves, they tried to make recompense. They tried to put them into a better situation. And then again, secret societies, the Ku Klux Klan, the B'nai B'rith, again, these are all agents of the crown. These are all extensions of the British monarchy and their oligarch circle of power. That if people understood that that's what was going on, then they would have more information. I don't know that I've done a good job of explaining this, but my oversimplified answer is ask questions. Don't make accusations, and let people ask questions that lead people in the direction that you want them to go in. And if you want to learn how to do that, I suggest Matteo Morelli's neurolinguistic programming online classes. He teaches people how to do that. Okay. The difference between somebody having a friendly conversation and a hypnotist is that a hypnotist has intent, right? So if you're trying to undo DEI with your questioning, you're going to be doing it with intent. So you need to be clever about the way that you ask the questions. So that's my answer to that one. Let's see what this says. Platonic dialogue is difficult these days. Got to be gentle. Show you care about them. Again, the key breakthrough, and Robert Dilts talks about this. There's a bunch of Robert Dilts videos in the book section of the Duke Report, and if you watch, and he was much younger. They're probably 30 years old, and it's right when he started, doing his sleight of mouth ideas. And Neil Strauss writes about this in his book, The Game, which is also about neurolinguistic programming. And that is that if you're not in a position of rapport with the person that you're having a conversation with, if they're not, if you're having an adversarial conversation with them, this isn't going to work. Which is why you've got to love your neighbors. This is why you've got to love your enemies. What Jesus is saying in the Gospels is he's saying you need rapport. Okay. If you don't have rapport, you're not going to get through to people. Okay. So rapport first, and you can do rapport. There's a lot of simple tricks that you could do. You can do mirroring is the easiest thing. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you want them to be on your side, if they're using their right hand to talk, you start using your left hand to talk. Okay. So you're mirroring them like you're in a mirror, right? If they're scratching their cheek, you scratch your cheek. If they're crossing their leg, you cross your leg. This works. This is scientifically proven. Okay. This absolutely 100% works. You could put people into rapport by simply mirroring what they're doing. Okay. By agreeing with them. Everything by coming up with serial statements that they agree with, getting them to say yes 3 or 4 times before you ask the question that you ask. Watch Tucker Carlson every night. Every night, Tucker Carlson starts his monologue with a yes ladder. I was driving in a truck with Stu Peters in Minnesota 2 or 3 years ago, And I was talking to him about this stuff, and he goes, "Do you think I'm trained in this stuff?" And I said, "Well, you certainly act like you're trained." He goes, "Do you know how I did it?" And I said, "How's that?" And he goes, "I just copied Tucker Carlson." Okay, great. That's called modeling. That's what Tony Robbins would, or John Grinder, or Richard Bandler, or Robert Dilts would call modeling. Okay, that Stu Peters modeled Tucker Carlson. He stole his framework, his linguistic framework. Now, Tucker Carlson doesn't talk about the same subjects as Stu Peters. And again, this really only works in a media format when you're talking to a specific audience. If you're having a conversation, I'm not really having a conversation right now. I'm looking at a video of myself, and off on the side of my screen, I'm seeing things that people are writing. I don't have the ability to measure the person's attention that they have, looking at whether or not they're continuing to have eye contact with me, or whether or not they're like looking over my shoulder at something else that's interesting to them. Those are called micro expressions. These are all things that you can do in a one-on-one situation. It's part of the reason why Zoom and putting people in classrooms in rows instead of in circles where they face each other turns off all of these visual cues that we have with other people. But if you want to have a real insightful conversation with somebody, and you have any kind of chance of helping them reframe their reality, you need to put them into rapport, and then you need to be able to ask them questions that engage them, like on a in a way that gets closer to their deep structure. And you do that by analyzing their speech for deletions, distortions, and generalizations, which I've talked about earlier. So yeah, Platonic dialogue is difficult, but you have to understand that in order to have a Platonic dialogue, it's pretty necessary to be, like I said, face-to-face is the best way to have a Platonic dialogue, right? Like in Plato, all of these people are sitting in a circle, right? They're sitting in the academy, right? You can imagine they've got their togas on, and they're all sitting there, and they're talking to each other. This is not the way that we do things nowadays. It's very hard. Sarcasm and nuance are almost impossible in text messaging. How many times have you written something sarcastic that's been completely misconstrued by the person that read the text message? Because you had an idea in your head when you typed it out that was not the idea that the person had who read it. Okay? So nuance is a big deal, and rapport is a big deal. And we need to be good at rapport, which is why love your neighbor and love your enemy wind up becoming the most important components, or at least the most primary. They're the things that you have to do first. Okay, you're never going to shout somebody down and make them your friend. You know, it's not going to work, or at least your ally. We don't need friends as much as we need allies. Fear-free solution said, how do you get the jabbed to think that they've been poisoned with a bioweapon? With mercy. People who got jabbed are the victims of epistemological warfare and a bioweapon. Okay, they've been lied to. Fear is the vector that has been used in order to convince them to do something that was against their best interests, which is irrevocable. Okay, I have many people in my life who I love dearly. Okay, who I would trade places with in a second, in a heartbeat. Okay, if there was some mortal situation involved, and there's nothing that I can do. There's no words that are going to change it. Okay, and my question back to you, to Fearfully Solutions, why would you want them to think that they've been poisoned? So you could be right. They're going to have to deal with this, with the circumstances, with the, what's the word? Consequences of an irrevocable action. Okay. They don't need you to convince them of it. Okay. And if they want, and if they want to think, if a bad thing happens to them and they want to chalk it up to something else because their cognitive dissonance doesn't let them come to that conclusion, you know what? God bless them. You know, I think that you have to ask yourself why you think that that's an ideal goal, because I don't think that it is. I think that we need to find ways to not let the epistemological war that is consuming us do that. And so we need to find the truth. But the truth isn't about being right. The truth is the truth. And it doesn't change whether you believe it or not. It doesn't believe whether or not it doesn't change whether you know it and somebody else doesn't. The truth is just the truth. Okay, so I think trying to get the jab to think that they've been poisoned is not a goal. And maybe there's a different way that I could reframe it if I thought about it. And I wasn't standing here doing a video. All right, JFB says, I'll suggest to Richard Grove at Grand Theft World to have you on. Would it be okay with that? Yes, Richard. Richard's had me on. Richard had me on. Richard never had me on his live show. I'd love to be on his live show. And I'm willing to deal with the ridiculous hours on Sunday too. I have to convince my wife of it, but no, I love Richard Grove and I love Richard's show, and I've learned I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it weren't for Richard Grove and James Corbett. Like, I just wouldn't be. But yeah, look, I love Richard. He's great. And I would love to do a show. Here we go. Let's see what's next. Ron in Alaska. With such a diversity of ideas, how do you get everybody on the same page? Or is that even necessary? Maybe you need only 6% to affect change. Yeah, I don't think everybody needs to be on the same page. Like I said, the truth is just the truth. Okay. So if people knew that World War I and World War II, I mean, there's a cliche, all wars are bankers' wars, right? But if people actually knew that that FDR and Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler were all financed out of 120 Broadway, that all of their money for building all of the stuff that they used to blow each other up. And by the way, they didn't blow each other up. It was just all the citizens of the countries that were involved, the millions of citizens of countries that were dying and paying for the privilege of dying. If people knew that, then maybe we wouldn't be able to, maybe they wouldn't be able to get enough people to go out and fight a war. But I think that, first things first is we need people to understand what the truth is. And the only way that you can do that is by getting people to, I mean, I've talked about this a lot. I've tweeted a few kind of glib tweets about it, and the idea that, that you can, what did I say? You can think your way out of not knowing something. That is, if you have a regiment of questions that you ask, why, the journalism questions, what they call them interrogative questions, right? Who, what, where, when, why, how, okay? And you stick with Parmenides' principle of what is, okay? So the problem that I have with almost all philosophers at this point, and that's why I keep coming back to Parmenides, is that they, as Thomas Aquinas pointed out eloquently at one point, they like to argue about how many angels dance on the head of a pin. They like to build strong cases for imaginary situations and then have big, long arguments about it. Sometimes these arguments go for centuries. You know, James Lindsay is still arguing with Karl Marx. You know, many of these ideas are just bankrupt. Like I call them bafflegab. And when I think something is bafflegab, I think, well, it's not worth wasting your thinking about it. Okay. It's an imaginary situation. Why are we arguing about an imaginary situation? I've said this on shows before. I'm friends with Curtis Yarvin. I like Curtis Yarvin. I think he's a funny guy. He got me to watch the movie Hail Caesar. He grabbed me by my shoulders and said, "You have to watch that movie, Peter." Okay. Curtis Yarvin's not a bad guy. It's the people who are doing the things that Curtis Yarvin is writing about who are the bad people. Okay. I don't think Karl Marx was necessarily Karl Marx is a morally reprehensible person, but he's not responsible for the Lenin and the Stalin and the Trotsky of it. Okay. Because they took ideas that Marx got probably from David Urquhart or who's that other British oligarch? I think Matt Harrett knows. Anyway, you know, he's a cutout, right? He wrote the ideas down. They published it in a book. He probably didn't even write half the stuff. It was probably Friedrich Engels or somebody else. Okay. But he had the beard and they put his picture on the cover and, you know, he died in London. He's buried in London, Highgate Cemetery. Right. And so we're still arguing about his bad ideas and, you know, communism and capitalism, as far as I am concerned, are it's a false dichotomy. The communism's never really worked. You can't point to any place where it's really worked. Capitalism isn't really capitalism. Really, it's kind of financial mercantilism. Okay, I like what Matt Crawford calls it, the military occult banking syndicate. I mean, that's really what capitalism is. The reason that milk is so expensive is because it's a monopoly. And I found this out when I had a kid. You know, when my baby was born, when my daughter was born, I was buying baby formula and it was really expensive. And because I bought it all online and I had a record of it, by the time my daughter got off of formula, I realized that I had spent $7,000 on formula. Well, I desperately looked for all kinds of alternatives for formula, not well enough, obviously. I mean, I didn't know then what I know now. And all baby formula is made by the same people. It's the same company. It's a monopoly. It's a cartel that makes baby formula. And so in Iraq, when Bill Clinton fired cruise missiles and claimed that he was destroying a weapons of mass destruction factory, and Saddam Hussein said it was a baby formula factory, I was thinking it was probably a baby formula factory because this is the way the cartel controls the market. Okay. Why is all since COVID-19, almost all we have to talk to our neighbor about this. If you're watching, neighbor, your dog is completely out of control. Anyway, since COVID-19, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but anything that is a disinfectant, so alcohol, cleanser, bleach, it's all like doubled and tripled in price. Well, alcohol and bleach, why are those things are commodities? How could those things double or triple in price because of COVID-19? If you didn't have a cartel, or if you didn't have a monopoly on the manufacturing of those things, because those things are about from the chemical processing business, bleach and isopropyl alcohol, those are about like the most baseline chemicals that you can get, but they've doubled or tripled in price since COVID. So to me, that's the metadata that you've got a cartel economy. So why am I talking about that? Because I think capitalism is fake. I think communism is fake. And so if you want to have a big argument about which system is better, they're both fake systems. Neither one of them really exists. It's not really the world that we live in. Okay. So why are we talking about it? James, Lindsay, why are you talking about it? Okay. As long as you keep people in a dialectic, as long as you keep people into a binary argument someplace, okay, then they're not going to look for another solution. Okay. So I think capitalism fake is communism is fake. And if we're talking about it, then we're literally wasting our lives. The seconds of our life are dripping away. But the question was, how do you get everybody on the same page? And that's probably by asking them obvious questions. Like the question that one of the first questions that I had when I started thinking about this stuff is that if the government can spend money that it doesn't have, then why do you have to pay taxes? Honest question. Okay. Ask somebody that question at a party. Okay. Their cognitive dissonance will kick in and they'll make up all kinds of reasons that don't have anything. They'll give you a reason and you could say, well, that's a complex equivalence. They'll scratch their head and go, what? And you go, well, you've taken a bunch of things that are kind of disassociated and then you put them together into something that you call an explanation, but it's not really true, is it? And again, by asking people questions that put them into a cognitive dissonance state, if you're ready with a suggestion, if you're a hypnotist, then you can steer them. But if you just want to have an honest conversation with them, they may wander away from that conversation with that idea in their head and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, I got to figure this thing out. That's what happened to me. You know, George Webb was saying it's all in the metadata. It's all in the metadata. And I was going, what's metadata? I'm like, metadata. You know, the metadata about the Foundation series, which I wrote, is that Isaac Asimov had one story and Apple had another story. They both called them Foundation. They had some of the same characters, but the stories are not exactly the same. So if you look at what the differences are between the stories, this is self-evident truth. Isaac Asimov wrote the book. You can go to the library and get the book. You can go online. You can read it, right? If you go to the Duke Report, you can find a place where you can read it for free. If you get Apple Plus, you can go watch the Apple Plus series and you can go, oh, look, they have a clone dynasty. That wasn't in Asimov's book. And if you watch the fan sites, they say, oh, well, they had to have characters that would go all through thousands of years of time. And so they have to be able to do things like clone them or put them into cryo sleep, or none of these things were in Asimov's universe. Well, you don't really need to do that, but it's a good cover story. It's a parallel construction for why you would do it. But what's the metadata? The metadata is that they're into genetic cloning of people, right? Another big part of the metadata there is that they're into erasing people's memories. Well, what other series does that? Well, it's the series I talked about at the beginning of the show. It's Severance. It's all about erasing memories. And my guess is, I haven't researched this. Maybe somebody who's watching can research and tell me in the comments or send me an email at contact@the-Duke Report. But my guess, I was thinking Philip K. Dick, didn't he write Johnny Mnemonic? Wasn't that about memory? So, I had a whole list of epistemological themes. I think that, memory control is an epistemological theme. And you get all involved in the story and the special effects and the explosions and the women taking their clothes off and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about erasing people's memories. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what they're doing and they're talking about. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, Ron, but if I didn't, you can DM me on Twitter and we can have a conversation about it. How do you answer to people to say it's your truth? There is no such thing as your truth. I would just say there is no such thing as your truth. There's the truth. Okay. And they'll say, well, what's true for me is not true for you. And you can go, well, that's a perspective. This is where linguistic precision, okay, comes into play. Okay. My truth, okay, is my perception. Okay. But truth is something that is universal. Okay. People might say, oh, the sky is blue is universal. Well, not on an overcast day, right? So the truth is something like, You know, if I shoot you in the head with a 357 Magnum, you're going to die. Okay. Most likely. That's the truth. Okay. So it's your truth. No, it's your perspective. And I would say, let's be specific. You explain to me how you can have a different truth than I can have. Okay. And when they give you that explanation, you'll say, well, that's epistemological warfare, because what you've done is you've taken the definition of a word, which is perception, and you've substituted it with another word, which is called truth. And I've got to, again, I don't have all my Greek terms. I posted them on notes, but I don't have all my Greek terms from this meta history book memorized yet. But that is epistemological warfare. And you could just use that word. You could say, well, that's epistemological warfare. And those people won't know what epistemological is. And so they'll think you're smarter than they are, which is bafflegab. But unless you do know what epistemology is. But it's your truth is I'm going to use the universal quantifier here, is never true. You could say it's my truth. And you can go, well, that's never true. Well, what do you mean it's never true? Well, if different people have different truths, those are called perceptions. So if you're taking the word perception and you're substituting the word truth for perception, then you're making something up. So it's BS. Anyway, I don't know if that helped or not. And I'm sure that there's other people who are more eloquent at coming up with solutions than I am. 23 says, what's the transhumanism paradigm paradox exactly? Besides the usual fear-based ideology, what if it is for something else entirely? It is. Like we are not being told of some sort of looming human crisis. Well, the looming human crisis is a trope, okay, that is used a lot in order to get us to go do things or buy things or be afraid of things, jump into our little true believer cubby holes. But the transhumanism paradigm comes from Gnosticism with capital G. And the idea is that human beings are not good enough and that we need to be made better. This is the Illuminati were originally called the perfectibilists, meaning that we have to perfect ourselves. AI is better than us. AI is not better than us. AI is faster than us in many things, but it's not better than us. And so the paradigm that they want to sell all of us, it's what movies like Terminator are about, and HAL in 2001. The paradigm is that we're not good enough and that we need to be perfected. And this is this all gets down to control, because somebody who is the Wolfgang Smith explains that the difference between Eastern religions and Christianity, and the reason that you can't really have something like what's Blavatsky theosophy, that all religions are not actually the same, right? Because it's only in Christianity that you're trying to perfect the self, right? In all the Eastern religions, you're trying to destroy the self, okay? And you can't reconcile those two things. You can't put those two things together. So to answer your question, they want to sell transhumanism because they want to sell the idea that we as human beings are not good enough, right? And that we need to be perfected. And that there's a lot of different psychological games that you can play if you get people to believe that stuff. Like I've talked about earlier, shows like Upload on Amazon or books like Fall from Neil Stephenson will convince people, or projects like Story File, which is Steven Spielberg's creepiest Avatar Tombstone project, that if you get people to believe that they can upload their consciousness to a machine, it makes it very easy for those people to think, oh, well, when I get old and I've got arthritis and I'm uncomfortable getting out of bed in the morning, I'm just going to kill myself because I'm going to live on, in this virtual world. Well, that screensaver that you think is yourself may act like you, but it's not you. Okay. It's like, and again, this is the inverse problem that they're doing in the show. It's inverse transhumanism that they're doing in this show, Severance, because what they're doing is that they're inverting that idea of creating a digital twin. They're taking a real human and they're splitting them in half and then creating the same crisis for them. So let me see. I'm going to read this one more time. What is the transhumanism paradigm? So the idea is that we're not good enough. And if we can get ourselves to believe that we're not good enough, then they can convince us to do all kinds of things that we probably wouldn't want to do unless we were convinced that we weren't good enough. This is where like transgender stuff comes from too. It's like I did used to make a joke when I was a kid. When all this stuff started, though, I used to tell people it was like my pickup line before I was married was that I'm a gay woman trapped in a man's body, which I kind of stole, I think I stole that from Woody Allen. Anyway, besides the usual fear-based ideology, what if it is for something else entirely? That's what it's for. That's what I explained. Like we're not being told some sort of looming human crisis. Yeah. Again, there's always going to be human crisis. And all you have to do is turn on the TV because this is the metadata, right? Michael Hoffman writes about it in his book, Secret Societies of Psychological Warfare. It is called Truth or Consequences. I wrote an article. I took 4 paragraphs basically out of his book and turned it into a post on the Duke Report. You can go read about it. It's got a picture of some blonde and Anubis driving through the desert outside of Las Vegas. I can't remember what the title was that I put on it. But yeah, it's called Truth or Consequences. So they're telling us, if you turn on the TV, they're telling us what they're doing, okay? Because they control the media, okay? That's why I talk about all these tropes. Like, we shouldn't ignore the tropes, okay? If they've made 500 space movies since 1950, okay, and done 500,000 hours or 5 million hours of TV programming on it, then we got to believe that getting us to believe in extraterrestrials or something that's going on in outer space is important to the people who want us to believe this stuff. That's the metadata. Okay, so I spend hours just going through all the names of the shows on Prime. I'm actually one of those people who just goes through it going, oh yeah, space movie, yeah. Anyway, because after a while you can't find anything that you want to watch anyway. Anyway, here we go. The Apple series for all mankind blatantly reconstructs known history as entertaining. Is this signal reduction? I'll have to go look at it because I don't have anything else to watch on Apple right now because we spent our $9 a month and we watched all of Foundation and then we watched all of Severance. So I was thinking about canceling it, but if you're giving me another show to binge watch before I cancel it, For All Mankind blatantly reconstructs known history as entertaining. Yeah, probably. Look, again, and that's what this book, and I wrote an article about it. It's on the Duke Report about this meta history book about Hayden White. And it was funny because I remember talking to my friend Carolyn who was one of the only people that I was like an adult in the room when I worked at News Corp and the X-Files. There was a couple of us. And she was talking to me one day, we were having lunch, about how because Fox News was being started when I worked at Fox in 93, 94, 95. And Fox Sports was going, but Fox News was just spinning up. Like they hadn't started it yet. It was still, I think, only on local TV. They didn't have national Fox News yet. And Carolyn was talking about how everybody's pissed in the news business because Rupert's who she used to call Roop Doggy Dog. She said, well, people are pissed at Roop Doggy Dog because he thinks that news is entertainment. And I kind of thought that was genius at the time because, I wasn't paying attention to anything except, code at that point. But yeah, that's the point that Hayden White makes, right? And the error that I think that Hayden White, or the reason I would call this book Meta History: A Limited Hangout, is that he doesn't attribute malice to the retelling of those stories, and I do. I think that if you read The Poison Loving Cup, and you understand what the Rhodes scholarships were originally intended to be, they were intended to rewrite history, and I think that they've been very successful at that, which is why, going back to my comment earlier at the beginning of the show about whether or not I actually believe the Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson stories, Alexander Hamilton, my question is how much of that stuff has been rewritten? Because there's no way of really knowing, right? There's, you could put a finger in the air and you could say, well, because the places that you would normally go to assure yourself that those things were factual or factual would be like Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, who pretty much are like the Pentagon of epistemological warfare. So that's why I try to stick with metadata. That's why what I learned from George 8 years ago became so important, because I can point to Foundation and I can point to Apple's version of it, and I can explain that to you. But do I really know what was in Alexander Hamilton's heart? I don't. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but here we go. If we were sitting in a room and we were making eye contact and I was building rapport, then maybe I could figure out whether or not that I answered your question or not. Rupert says, could you say truth is objective and perception is subjective? Oh, yes, it is. I mean, truth is something that is what do they say? I would use like the natural law definition of truth, which is that it's something that you can prove or is self-evident no matter what you think about it. Okay. If somebody falls off a 40-story building and they hit the ground, they're dead. Okay. Or if they jump off a 40-story building, they're going to die. I mean, short of getting hit with an updraft. I mean, there are stories of people who jumped out of airplanes who fell into 20-foot snowbanks, and I don't know if any of those things are true, but truth is something that's objectively self-evident, whether or not you're observing it, right? And perception, we all have eyes and ears and noses and a perception of time. And, many people, I mean, that's why one of the things that police do when they've got two people who are describing an event, the first thing they do is they separate them to get the people to describe the event that just happened to them. Because different people have different perceptions. I can tell you that my perception of what happened on January 7th is completely different than my wife's perception. And we were in the same room. Okay, we were together. I mean, Scott Adams calls it 2 movies, 1 screen, right? That's 100% real. And that's because everything, what's his name? Gary Indiana said on the radio once, he was doing an interview with Jed the Fish. And he said something that really affected me for the rest of my life. It affects me to this day. And he said, if it's written, it's fiction. And what he meant, and Jed said, well, can you explain that? And he said, well, it's always going through the filter of a person. And a person has their own, we call it, in hypnosis, they call it your frame, right? Your frame is all of your life experiences. It's your neuroses. It's all of your previous things that happened to you before you saw that thing happen in front of you. All of that stuff affects the way that you process the information. I think it was Descartes. I think Descartes was talking about something, your a priori experience. So in between the time that you see something and the time that you recognize it, there is, Descartes calls it your a priori experience. I think that's just another way of talking about the your frame. Okay, that it's a filter that you put everything through, and it changes the way that you perceive or you remember something. That's malleable, and it's usually malleable using words, which is why I always go back to the logos component of our belief system, is because our beliefs are framed in words. So I'm using words right now. I'm taking my abstract ideas, I'm translating them into something that I think that you'll understand. And one person who's listening to me, and if I, there's 139 people watching live right now. If I split you guys all up into a bunch of rooms and asked you 10 questions about what Peter said today, you'd probably get 139 different answers. And so, and that's probably a testament to my rambling, but that's not truth. Okay. People's perceptions of me are not truth. I don't know another way to explain it. I mean, Stefan Molyneux might have a better way of explaining it than I do, but truth is something that is self-evident and always happens, and or is always the case. And perception is completely based on who is experiencing it and how it's manifesting itself in them. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but again, at some point, this is why I like the Zoom calls. I'll do a Zoom call on Saturday. I like the Zoom calls because I like the back and forth. I like it, and I actually I had something to talk about today. I had this, People's Declaration of Independence, and so I had something to talk about today. But I generally I think I think it was Aristotle who said that I don't agree with everything Aristotle said, but I think that he said that maybe it was Plato. Maybe I'm misspeaking, that dialogue is the highest form of intellect because you're bouncing ideas back and forth. And sometimes with people you don't agree with. And it forces you to level up. It forces you to do something or think about things that you might not have thought about before. So with that, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to say that I'll do a Zoom call on Saturday. If nothing else comes up. Oh, we haven't done Quigley. Should we get Quigley? For all of you who have stuck around, it'll be the bonus. Quigley is doing much better. Quigley, the first couple of weeks that we had him, he was kind of sick, and he's been in great health for the last week or so. And so here he is. And
you say hi.
You gonna say hi?
He was sleeping.
He's kind of hot.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, it's warm here in Oxnard, California, and beautiful. Let me see. What is D. Sisconi saying? What is Gnosis Logos? What is Gnosis? Logos has its limitations. Logos is algorithmic integrity, which doesn't always equal truth. No, if you look at my posts on linguistic Christianity, Logos is the process, and the process needs to be applied with discernment. The Greek word for discernment is crisis, which is interesting because it means something completely different in English. So you have to use Logos and crisis in the direction of love in order to ascertain truth. So Logos by itself is not what is required. Logos is it's like Logos is code, okay, and you have to write the code into an application in order to find truth. So you've got logos, you've got crisis, and you've got, which is discernment. You've got logos, discernment, and if you move in a direction of love, you'll find truth. And if you, and the opposite, Satan means to go in the opposite direction. If you're not going in the direction of truth, then you're going in the satanic direction, and that direction is called sin. Anyway, there it is. Let me just see. So Arthur says yay. Somebody said sweet quiggly, and that's a thick coat. It's not that. His coat is not that thick. It's very fluffy. He's got a fluffy coat. Get him wet. We got him wet. He loves getting wet. Like almost like, I think if we had a pool, he'd be like a wading pool or something. He'd be very happy about it. Anyway, thanks for joining, everybody. I will see you again next Tuesday, and I'll do a Zoom call for paid members on Saturday at 2:00. And with that, I will see you later.